Hey Hacksters, what's up? Welcome to Hackster Café. Today we have Jesse from PyTop. So you're the co-founder and CEO, is that right?
Yes, yeah, I am.
Awesome. So I hear that, well, okay, so first up, what is PyTop?
So PyTop has changed over the years, but with the release of our newest PyTop, it's a go anywhere computer that basically turns your world into a classroom. And by that, I mean we provide hardware, software, content, essentially an entire learning framework to enable people to solve real world problems through learning to code, learning about engineering, about design thinking, and just in general, how to create amazing things with computers to solve real world problems.
That's really cool. So the new one that's coming out is the PyTop 4, right? And how's that different from previous models?
So I've got one here.
Oh, yeah.
So the PyTop 4, it's really, I guess, over the time when we made PyTop, we always wanted people to build things. We wanted people to play with real things and kind of create physical projects and products that would interact with digital skills. And previously, we had the PyTop laptops, which were build-it-yourself laptops, but really the special sauce about all of those products were that, well, you were going to use our modular rail to, put powered breadboards in there, create, maybe like simple things at first, like an LED that will blink, but then turn that into a traffic light, and then you can add sounds and music to that, turn it into a synth, that type of stuff. But
Whoa.
with PyTop 4, it's all about what you build with the device. So we wanted to enable people to just super easily get interested and intrigued with the world of like building physical items and interacting with those sort of physical projects.
Hmm.
Um, with
So it's
this,
gone from sort of like computer form to all-in-one sensors and everything in one little package?
yeah, I mean, it was always the idea that like PyTop was a project or a product that you were going to build other things with. It's just that we kind of did a little too good of a job turning it into a laptop form factor. With this, it's like you can get it, you can just plug it into a Chromebook or plug it into any screen, and bam, it's your PyTop. You've got access to GPIO pins here, so you can interact with a whole bunch of Raspberry Pi hats, and we've got a cable extension so you can interact with Arduinos.
That's super
It's
cool.
got like 5 hours of battery life, and so you can make a whole bunch of projects with this. Yeah, it can be your computer, but it can also be a Mars rover or a weather station or a
I
selfie
saw
camera.
stuff about that on your website. Is that a speaker on the front of there?
So the speaker is here, so it's got a speaker integrated into it. This is just
Cool.
some
Just like
venting.
design. Oh, that makes
Raspberry,
sense for heat.
yeah, Raspberry Pis can get hot, so but
Yeah. So, by the way, we have this video from a couple years ago when we went to Maker Faire UK, and I think this was in Newcastle,
yeah.
and I got to have a peek at the PyTop Seed, and at that time it had this really cool sort of learning adventure game built in. That
Uh-huh.
I love the concept of that, and I think it's cool that it's morphing into more of a hardware focused thing, but you can kind of see the rail down there that Jesse's talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, Seed Universe. It's a fun game that has some nice artwork and will take you through
Seriously.
the basics of kind of, okay, like let's think about code and let's think about how you might be able to solve problems using code. We have some plans around that later on in the year. It's not on the front burner of what we're doing, but we have some. I think really the focus is we want people to make their own games. And wouldn't it
Cool.
be nice if you had some amazing assets that look great, but that you might be able to integrate yourself into a Scratch game or something that you've created? So kind of helping people create something amazing, but it's yours, is the key.
That's super rad. So how did you get into building things like this? Because I heard that you have a degree in law and then you started doing this?
Yeah, so I, I, I when I was 12, I signed a contract with my parents saying that I was going to be a lawyer.
What?
So I,
That's intense.
yeah, yeah, I guess I read one too many John Grisham novels, and I really thought that law was going to be something that I was interested in.
You signed a contract with them?
With my parents, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Clearly you weren't a lawyer yet, because you would have known that a minor can't.
I know, I know. These things, yeah. I did law at university, and really, through doing it, I realized it just wasn't the place I wanted to be. I think
Mm.
I knew I didn't want to do law when I was sitting in a torts lecture, and like the lecturer came up on the screen, and they were like, put this big picture of this person on the screen, and they were like, one day, if you're lucky, you'll be able to work for a person like this.
Oh no.
And I just thought, I'm not, like everybody else was so excited about that prospect, and I just thought, I'm not actually excited about this prospect. No one, when I was younger, had told me that, hey, guess what? Like, like mobile phones, like this wasn't made by some alien. This was made by people like me and you. And you could make those types of things too if you just learn these sets of skills. When I
Yeah.
was in school, like computer science was learning to touch type and basically use Excel spreadsheets and just understand how the internet worked. So no one, especially from where I was coming from, like my grandpa was an auto mechanic, my parents are salespeople. No one told me like, hey, there's this guy called Steve Jobs and he made this company from nothing, or like Johnny Ive does all these amazing material science stuff, or
Yeah.
Larry Ellison's made this, immense, huge company, and these people are like changing the face of the planet. Nobody in my school uh, was saying anything like that. So I thought, the best route for me would be, let's go and be a lawyer. I didn't realize it was exactly the opposite of what I remember. I like told my parents, I was like, look guys, I don't want to be a lawyer. I just want to like be on a desk and I want to invent stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
and happily I got there eventually, but that's kind of one of the driving forces behind why we went so heavy into education, specifically not really targeting the retail space. We wanted to make the best thing for teachers, we wanted to make the best thing for students, and we wanted to solve this massive problem, which is like there's literally millions of kids out there right now that go to schools that may not have the resources or haven't been introduced to computer science in a sort of positive enough fashion. um, I want to take those kids and just introduce them into a world of actual real making. And by that, I mean, you're going to learn how to code. You're going to learn about electronics. You're going to learn about 3D printing and design thinking. You're going to learn about how all of that can come together, and you're going to solve real problems with the knowledge that you're gaining in the classroom, which I think is just super inspiring for, kids that are, trying to figure out what it is they want to do in life.
This is super cool. I feel like there's so much sort of legal, so many potential pitfalls in terms of working with children that I feel like maybe your background would have helped you with some of that. Do you feel like it serves you at all in your current?
Uh, I, because we're supplying the product, I think that's, it's different than being,
Right, you're not like teaching the classes or whatever.
yeah.
Huh.
Now, I have taught classes before.
Mm.
In fact, that was like how, when we first made the very first Pie Top, I mean, we were, it took 170 hours to print it on the 3D printer in my living room.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Wait, to print one of them or?
Print one of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a massive print. And we would sleep, me and my co-founder Ryan would sleep in shifts around the 3D printer, and I'd have like this plier clippers, and like if it looked like it was going a little, they used to bobble a lot, like print too much, and so I would like clip the 3D prints as going around, and yeah, we show basically agreeing to teach a class with it was one of the reasons why we got it done so quickly, because we were like, yeah, like next week, no problem.
Yeah, yeah. Having
And,
deadlines is always good, but that definitely sounds pretty stressful.
but that, those were formative times for PyTop, and the way that we were thinking of approaching these problems in the classroom. I don't think you can really appreciate the the challenges of being a teacher unless
Yeah.
you go in and you start teaching students. And definitely the first 6 months of PyTop, once we had a prototype, it was like me and Ryan going around to, like Raspberry Pi events, to hackathons, going into classrooms and helping teach kids for like a weekend, like a special weekend. It really brought home, the fact that computer science in schools could definitely use something that would inspire these kids or enable them to be inspired, and
Yeah.
enable the teacher really to be that really important keystone part of the inspiration process.
Yeah, I love that you were really involved with like hands-on sort of use of it and interacting with people who were using it from the very beginning, because that's so important in terms of like you said you wanted to design something that was like good for the like really useful for the teachers and for the students, and like you can't do that from a bubble far away. You have to get down into it. And I totally agree with you about the teaching thing. Like uh years ago when I was starting out, I was teaching kids to build robots with NXTs, like the Lego Mindstorm things.
Yeah,
And oh man, like you realize the kinds of pressures that people are under, and like how you have to be able to answer every little question or like know how to find everything. And it's a special skill, and I totally admire teachers. That's so cool.
and it's interesting, like because of the assessment piece that we've seen in school. Like everybody has really tried to make an imperfect system more efficient. Like the way that we teach kids in school is kind of starting to become out of date. And one of the
Hmm.
things that I talk about a lot is like, okay, so 15 years ago, we didn't have, a mobile phone in our pocket, which was basically the sum of all, or now it's the sum of all human knowledge. You
Yeah.
go onto Google and bam, you can answer any question that you might have, with enough poking around. Think about what's going to happen over the next 15 years. Eventually, there will be like heads-up displays, or there will be some form of technology that essentially makes knowledge not just accessible at any time, but constantly there at all times. So
Right. Kind of like intrinsic as opposed to like an external thing that you access.
exactly. So when we're having a conversation, you will have a device that's helping you with the conversation by providing you facts and figures in order to have you become more relevant in day-to-day discourse with other people. And this is just the way technology is going to go. And then once you realize that memorization is going to become obsolete.
Yeah, that whole thing, like already that thing of like where your teachers would tell you that you won't always have a calculator in your pocket. It's like,
Yeah,
that
but
cliche.
now it's not just that I want. It's not just that I have a calculator in my pocket. It's that it
Yes,
will
you
be
have
doing all of those sums for me all of the time
yeah.
automatically. So then
You
when
don't even have to punch it in. Like, there's so many things that just anticipate your needs.
exactly. So when memorization becomes obsolete, which is what we teach kids in school, we teach
Yeah.
them to memorize things, and then we ask them to regurgitate it on an exam. Well, who are the leaders? Who are the shapers? Who are the people that are going to help change the world in the future? It's not the people that can memorize the best. It's the people that can take and use information and apply information in the best way. And that's what we try and provide in the classroom. It's,
Yeah.
okay, you're gonna hook in sensors to this, and you're gonna use some sample code to understand how it works. But what we really want you to do is take those samples and those examples, change them, alter them, or apply them to situations that you care about, and then in doing so, you get a far better learning outcome. Like you're still going to get, at the end of the day, the exams are what exams are. You're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to write the definition of a for loop, or you're going to have to explain the different types of data there are. But when you learn through application, it just sticks in your mind so much better, because you go, oh, okay, yeah, I could talk about Booleans because I made this project that involved capturing data, and this was one of the data types I captured, and so here's my example, here's what it is, and there you go. But on
Yeah,
the
you can just pull from those reserves. You don't even still have to remember it. You can just like, that's why I publish projects, is because it's like an external memory for myself. I can be like, oh yeah. And like the more things you can mash together, the more kinds of memory you can integrate, like physical, audio, visual, etc., like the better it works. Plus, like you were saying, like so much of the necessary intelligence for creating anything is synthesis. Is like being like, oh, if I take this thing and mash it up with that thing, I can solve this problem that I have.
yeah,
Oh, it's so exciting.
literally exactly how I fell into tech, because I basically, somebody confused me for somebody else and thought that yeah,
What?
thought that I could build websites, and I really needed to pay rent. So I said, yeah, I can build websites. And I sold the guy a website, and then I went home and was like, all right, went into YouTube, how to build websites. And that process of building that website was me going, okay, well, here's an example, like here's a widget that I can use, and here's somebody else's code that they've shared, and I put them all together and created a website. And over time, my skills got better. My clients wanted research algorithms. I built research algorithms, not because I inherently knew how to do that, but because I went online, I found knowledge, and I applied it to this, problem that I was trying to solve, which ultimately was how to pay rent. Um, and when I was, younger, doing all that, I guess it kind of, PyTop was so interesting to me in the beginning, and continues to be like just more and more amazing as time goes on, because when me and Ryan got together, like we always joke, like I never asked him if he could build a laptop, and he never asked me if I could sell one. And that was kind of our divisions. Like Ryan was and first class master's degree from Oxford University in engineering, is an amazing engineer. I was more of a jack of all trades when it comes to software and sales and kind of community building. But that whole process was this massive learning by making experience for me and him. And we kept iterating. We kept asking the community, like, what do you like about this? Even like, what color do you like? That's why my top has some green in it, because people really like
Yeah.
um,
There
and
aren't like a ton of green ones out there. I mean, except for like bare circuit boards tend to be a kind of green, but even that is sort of disappearing as a
it is,
default.
yeah. People are starting to. Apple has popularized the really nice, sleek black with white writing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of a youthful thing. Like the green color seems very sort of vibrant and like fresh, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I have a funny story about that actually. In the beginning, when the reason PyTop is, well, what the original PyTops were green, and why there's still some in the product today. Um, so it took 2 kilograms of filament to 3D print a laptop,
Uh-huh.
and it was basically a choice between, okay, are we going to get filament, or are we going to eat like tomato and pasta for like a week again? And we ate a lot of tomato and pasta sauce.
Yeah.
Uh, and, and and one day, the first time I let Ryan go to the 3D printing store himself, he comes back with 2 kilograms of atomic green filament. All the pie tops had been white or black or gray previously, and I was like, Ryan, what are you doing? Who makes a green laptop? And it's like, there's no way this is gonna look good. And he's like, yeah, but it was the only 2 kilograms of filament they had. It was the same color, so otherwise we're gonna print a two-tone laptop. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And it started to print, and about 10% through the print, it was just looking really, really good. And I don't know, it was like 11 o'clock at night, and we had lights shining on it, and I thought, oh man, I might be wrong. And it was and then that was actually the color that kind of that got a lot of traction online. People just saw this green laptop, and they're like, whoa, what is that?
Cool. Yeah, that whole thing of like constraints and creativity, super good.
Yeah. I have to say, I've learned a lot myself over the last 5 years, kind of understanding the creative process in all that it is. And especially now, now we're 80 people across 3 offices in the world. you know, the amount of input, like this is not just, you know, two guys in a living room thinking of something. You know, this is 80 team members working together to build this, but then literally hundreds of people in, you know, on the ancillary, because we user tested this for months and
Yeah.
months. Teachers, students, our community members, you know, got inside peeks as to like what we were building. And then, you know, you think about the entire manufacturing process, how many people are involved in essentially you know, bringing something to life. It's it's been a super cool creative endeavor that I
Oh, sorry, what?
just that I've been very lucky to be involved in.
Yeah, and I love, okay, so how this hooks in with what you were saying before about how like you got started with this, with building websites and stuff because you had to pay rent. That's totally a thing, and I love how PyTop and companies like it basically provide this way for people. Like, people take all kinds of jobs because they have to pay rent, not because they think it's something admirable or you know, fulfilling, or that will teach them something or that's exciting, but just because it's like you gotta pay rent, and that's a fact of life. And so the fact that you can like make this the rent payer for 80 plus people is freaking amazing. That's so cool.
It
And
was some weird, you know, yeah. I definitely, it was one of the things that I hadn't anticipated, like early on in the process. You know, you kind of think about, oh yeah, what's it going to be like to be like a crazy startup, and you might think that it's glamorous, and then you kind of like, I guess you realize that basically it's not glamorous at all. There are glamorous moments, like there's milestone moments that I remember, like when we were at TechCrunch Disrupt in London, and uh, John Biggs took up our PyTop prototype onto stage and, like, you know, showed it to like everybody on stage, and it was on the main stage. You know, that's super cool.
yeah,
But, you know, in the beginning, I mean, yeah, like we were, like Ryan was living in my living room. I was, you know, in my bedroom. A friend of mine was in the second bedroom, and we were all just like making do with how it was going. Like, you definitely wouldn't try to make a startup, much less an education, like a learning company, if money was the like key factor
yeah.
that was driving you. But I think we hit the right kind of vein at the right time, because you know, people don't realize computer science, especially in America, like 90% of schools in America don't teach computer science in a formal capacity. Most schools in the world don't teach computer science in a formal capacity.
It's hard for them to keep up, honestly, like especially public schools, you know, where there's,
You think about, like, what's the traditional way to teach anything? You buy a book,
yeah.
you do it instruction based. You tell kids this is what you need to learn at the end
Yeah,
of
it
the.
moves so fast. There's no textbooks, and people who are like trained in education don't necessarily get to keep up with what's going on.
Well, and think about, you know, the reality of the textbook industry is that it takes 2 years to publish any text,
Yeah.
and it takes, you know, at least 6 months, a year to write a textbook. So you write the textbook, you go through the whole publishing process, and it takes 2 years, and then it takes 6 months for it to start being used. So
And then the product is super expensive. So if a school isn't well funded, then they don't even get that for another like 8 years or something.
for computer science textbooks, they're like $150 each, and
Yeah.
that's just for the digital version. But so you don't even get anything real. But
Yeah. I mean,
you,
at least there are digital versions now. I remember when I was in school, I had dreamed of something like a Game Boy for textbooks where you could just have cartridges and you'd like slot them in and like you wouldn't have to carry 80 pounds of books around. But like, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I know I know
So many back problems.
the woes of textbooks from all. It's like you have to carry around. You have to be
Sprinting between classes in the locker being like, oh, what can
pocket.
I carry?
Yeah. But you know, I think it's just, when you look at computer science, it's uniquely, well, computer science and science in general, it's uniquely positioned to, you know, learn through application. The best way to learn science, the best way to learn computer science is through application of knowledge. It's not through rote memorization. That still has a place. It's still important to memorize things, but it's more important to apply that knowledge in meaningful and useful ways.
And to be
Uh,
able to know where to find it when you need it.
yeah. So it's kind of, it's an interesting thing to be involved in, and really we're still, I mean, I think we're still so early on that curve of computer science adoption across schools in the world, that it is an interesting time to be, to be a somewhat of a market shaper in terms of what gets, put into schools, and what schools are thinking about,
Yeah,
super
that's really cool.
to have the type of people that have got involved on the team. Our director of learning, Dr. Bill Rankin, he was the director of learning at Apple,
Ooh.
um, and our head of product, Graham Brown Martin. He wrote an international best-selling book called Learning Reimagined, that he basically went around all around the world researching all different education types in all in a whole bunch of countries, from refugee camps to to the top tier educationalists in Singapore, and produced this amazing book, which I really recommend. But being
Hmm.
able to work with people like that, it's kind of
Learning
like,
reimagined.
yeah, putting those types of people in the same like room as the we have amazing engineers at PyTop, and seeing what the I don't know of another company in the world right now that is taking sort of top level educationalists. 10% of our staff is learning design. They're learning designers. They're
Wow, cool.
that do nothing but make the experience of learning through PyTop the best possible experience. And then, we have the 50% of our staff that's engineers, that, those two kind of types of people, it's rare to have them interact in a way that's like, okay, you guys are going to work on creating the absolute best learning solution that you can possibly build. And, we're not going to, the whole success in our world is just great quality learning outcomes. Like I love it when I go on Twitter and I see teachers who've like put up videos of their students dancing around the classroom because they got an LED to start blinking, or they've hooked up, like put a makey in the pie top, hooked it up to a whole bunch of different vegetables, and now they've made like a vegetable synth.
It's
Uh,
incredible how empowering that feels when you first manage to control something with electronics.
oh yeah, it makes me think about like when I remember like torture when I was making my first website, and it was like, you've promised, and you're like, oh, how does all of this fit together? And then something works, and it's hard getting there. It's like hard fun, right? And it's
Yeah.
hard to make something that's meaningful, but then when it works, like there's this euphoria that happens. You're like, yes, I did it. Like, and you figured it out yourself. You've solved a problem that means something to you. It's a kind of feeling that you don't get in a large amount of subjects,
Mhm.
that ability to genuinely solve something that's interesting and fun, and means something to you.
So clearly you went in your personal sort of journey, you have gone from, law student to person like building electronics on your own, and now you're running a company. And you have all these amazing people around you. So how did you like build this team and attract all these awesome people? Did you just like be like, we're doing cool stuff, and people were like, they're doing cool stuff, I want to go do that? Or like, did you seek them out, or
So
both?
yeah, it's a question that I get asked a lot, and part of it is, so I have a kind of mentality around, well, how do you get lucky? Like how do you manage
Huh.
to make your life like a lucky life? And basically, you know, I know a lot of startup founders. I really enjoy talking to other founders and sort of sharing the problems and the challenges that we face. And I think it's important to do that kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, and I've noticed that really the difference, there's luck involved in everything. But you can make yourself more likely to become lucky
Yeah,
by,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and in the beginning of PyTop, more so, in the beginning of anything, right? I still work an incredible amount. My whole life basically revolves around PyTop, but almost it's impossible for something to stay as crazy as it was in the first year of PyTop, because literally it was like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for essentially 2 years in a row, was completely dedicated to PyTop.
Ooh.
I didn't do anything other than that. I didn't think about anything other than that. And so if you work really hard, you create more opportunities for you to become lucky. And the more people you meet and the more people you talk about your idea to, and the more people that you seek feedback from, means that you're more likely to run into people that are going to affect you positively and help you along that journey. So, in the beginning of PyTop, I used to walk around with an aluminum briefcase with a 3D printed handcuff,
Huh?
because it was the only one that it was the only PyTop in the world. And I would walk around, and I remember I walked past a 3D printing store in London, and I was like, you know what? I bet they would be interested in seeing like what we've made. And we didn't realize that, we realized it was hard to 3D print a laptop and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't realize other people would be so interested in it. And we took it in there, and the people in there were like, they were like, whoa. To put it politely, I can't believe you made this laptop. And so, they introduced us to people, and we kept going around to events and meeting more and more and more and more people. And through doing that, we got introduced to some of the great people that we have on the team now. And then, there's the other adage, like, great people know great people. And most of the, like the big CV people that we have, like everybody at PyTop are genuine A-team players. But it's great to have people that are, amazingly experienced. Our chairman, fantastic, huge experience in running businesses, but also being involved in education. Our COO, Paul Callahan, unbelievable guy. It's just, when you find these types of people, you want to hold on to them, and you want to incentivize them, and you want to make sure that they know that they are like one of the prevailing reasons as to why your company is going to do great. It's because you've brought on these this experience, and hopefully if you're young, you got to provide that youthful exuberance and that naivety, as to yeah, of course we could do things, but finding those great people is just about putting yourself out there, talking to loads and loads of people, finding people that like what you're doing, and then get them to work for you as a consultant first, and then trick them into being a full-time.
That's cool. Yeah. It's so much the opposite of the traditional corporate mindset, where it's like, we have to keep this under wraps, instead it's just like, you're going to attract people who are really excited. And especially if you're in a company like this, where it's like people who actually care, because people do care and they want to work on stuff that matters, but like, just finding it.
It's that's another massive part of it, and you have to be true to that mission. You can't use that mission and then not be real to it. That's one of the reasons why we have so many educationalists on the team, with real teaching experience. We have over 100 years of teaching experience on the team, which is, it's great, but you've kind of got to, if you're gonna talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk. On our website, if you go to education, you look at the team there, you can see a bio of everybody, and kind of what their background is.
Because people can smell BS like from a mile away, especially in open source.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, in open source, more than almost any other community there is, and it's it's an interesting. So open source is a really interesting place in general. But I was going to say, I think some corporates, big business have to deal with the way they are because they're big business, and there's kind of rules and it's, but when you're a small company and you're still agile and you're still able to do things in a way that might not work on a in terms of your approach to creating products, might not work on a Apple obviously aren't going to go and openly seek feedback from from everybody, but they'll,
Yeah.
they will find ways to get feedback and have people sign NDAs and all that kind of stuff. But it is a double-edged sword. I'm very comfortable with, seeking so much feedback from people because it is part of the company ethos, to work with our community, to back that up with incredible engineering talent and education talent, and then attempting to create basically what is the cutting edge, the best of the best. And when that's your mission, then it's
Yeah.
easy to share because you know that you're always going to come out with something better. There's never going to be, you're always going to be making the product better. And for us, it revolves a lot around the software and the sensor-based stuff that we're offering with this. It's how can we keep making this software better? How can we facilitate more projects being built? How can we facilitate better understanding of your students' results? How can we, increase engagement and inspiration levels in the classroom?
Yeah.
When you do that all the time, it is easier to share because you're not just making one thing and then that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's before we wrap up, let's take a quick look at, I'll pull up the PyTop page on here. So we've got the PyTop 4, which is the new one. And it's a go anywhere computer that inspires learners to change the world around you. So presumably if you're taking this with you to places, and I want to show some of the cool projects that people are doing, like this drone, etc. Presumably there's a way that you can use it out in the field without, like in a headless mode, without a monitor or whatever. And do you have some examples of that?
Yeah.
Is that
So
a good one?
there will be software that's released this year that allows you to control your PyTop from any device. So when you're talking about something like this,
Uh-huh.
more able to create a project and then use code that you've written on another device to control a project, a project that's based around this. So yeah, there'll be more coming out around that. But I guess one of the, let's think about how or what that means for a user. So you
Hmm.
saw the Mars rover project on there. The way that worked is you had a PyTop 4, you had one of our base plates that this clips into,
Hmm.
and then there was sensors and motors coming out of that base plate that enabled it with some 3D printing and some laser cutting to be a Mars rover with a robotic arm on it. The
Hmm.
way controlled that is you had another PyTop and it was linked to this rover that we've built, and we just plugged in a D-pad and then made another robotic arm that
Oh.
mirrored that the Mars rover would mirror. So through the power of the internet, you were able to build two pieces of a project and then have one of those pieces be the input and then one of those pieces be the output. And one of the things that we definitely want to facilitate over time is that doesn't just have to mean one project. A user could hack a project that is, their output, and then they could invite the community at large to, through PyTop or through any, through Arduinos or Raspberry Pi or through any way, to interact with this project that they've created. And some of the projects that we made, like our light and sound show. I don't know if that's on the I think that's on the website as
Oh
well.
yeah.
But that's an example of something that if you would allow
Ooh.
user interface with that, it could be really cool. What that is you see the PyTop 4 down there controlling
Oh
a,
yeah.
a massive light behind this 3D printed octagonal prism in the middle, which
Wow.
refracted the light into those prisms surrounding the 3D printed
That's
object.
really cool.
And then the outer circle are prisms that are on motors controlled by the
No
PyTop, and
way.
that refracted the light out into those color spectrums. And then in each of the corners, we had sensors that read the spectrum of light and then played a unique chord, making
Ah.
real-time, completely new music every time that it every time it registered a different light spectrum.
I love this because it combines sort of you see a lot of LED art around, but you don't see a lot that incorporates optical elements like this. So it's really combining kind of the electronic and the analog all in one to produce something that's really gorgeous.
But you could imagine, it's a short hop, skip, and a jump from turning something like that into something that is community driven. So, you could just create an online interface that would allow people to turn the prisms themselves. And then all of a sudden you have
Yeah.
basically the internet creating music using PyTop 4 and light.
I think that kind of project is super cool. It kind of reminds me of two things. There's like cheer lights, which is this global, like you can hook up your lights to a global network and then people tweet a color and all the ones in the world go that color. And then
Oh,
there's
that's
like Let's Robot.tv, which is like you can control people's robots that are hooked up to the internet. Only this is like an art piece and very cool.
I mean, and that's the thing, you could, as a user, you could build a Mars rover and then you could build a web interface very, very easily.
Mm. So where do people get their hands on this? I see that you can still find the previous versions of the PyTop online. So you can get the PyTop 3. Oh, is the PyTop 4? Is this just the same page? This is the same page. Okay, yeah. I'm not just bad at Google.
So yeah, PyTop 3, it's
And
still
let's
going to be
see.
around for a long time. It's our maker's laptop, and a lot of
Mhm.
people enjoy the laptop form factor. I mean, it has a lot of great advantages. It comes with the inventor's kit, and
Uh-huh.
it's a good one-stop shop for a computer that you want to learn and hack on.
Mm.
PyTop 4 will be available from May, and yeah, we'll have that'll mainly be for schools and code clubs.
Mm.
Uh, we will be releasing something in time for Christmas with all sorts of really good stuff.
Okay.
That um, we'll have a big software update around that time as well, and it will. I'm very excited about it. It's really it's taken a long time to get to I mean, a long time in PyTop years of
Yeah.
my life to get to this point where I feel like genuinely the PyTop 4 is really something so special because it enables so many people to interact with each other through projects, through code, through engineering, that I genuinely think we're going to see some projects that, I mean, I've already seen projects that have blown my mind. There are kids in America that build solar cars in high
Oh,
school,
yeah.
and then they've raced them from Texas to California. And they
What?
use, yeah.
Wait, we're in California. I want to go.
Yeah, right. It's called the Solar Car Challenge.
Oh,
And
man.
it's great. And Dr. Lehman behind it. I mean, you couldn't imagine a better group of people and a better organization that's doing something unique in schools for students. But they, those kids used PyTops to measure the telemetry data of their vehicles and make better race decisions. You know, if like as if I would have ever imagined anyone doing that when it was just me and Ryan in my.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and how do people get involved with the project if they want?
So we've got a contact form on the website. Most of the times, right now, like we don't have any like formal process of how to get involved. Most of the time, it's we'll get a contact form request, and so our support will let them know, well, here's some events that we're going to be at, or here's this is kind of where some PyTop team members will be. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then the best thing is to meet one of us in person, and just if people have a great idea, then we're gonna try and facilitate that. I think one of our young PyToppers, he was Femi. He won a Princess Diana award, I think it was 2 years ago, for teaching kids using PyTops and using BBC Microbit.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we got involved with Femi through Raspberry Jams, and it was just, I guess that's how most of the time we meet most of the people that we work with, kind of on that kind of feedback or special project stuff.
Super rad. So it seems like you've come through an awesome journey, and I gotta throw in there that I think you secretly have kind of a sense of flair as well, because this green laptop, and then also the thing with the handcuff and the briefcase, like that isn't just like, that's like a thing that definitely catches people's attention, and
Yeah,
I
I
feel
think
like that maybe had a part to do with like your notoriety, let's put it that way. But yeah, super excited to see how far this has come. And so we're gonna be watching out in May for the new one, and then around Christmas.
yeah, there'll be more updates, and we'll have more videos and whatnot come out. But yeah, on the Flair thing, I always want to know, but why can't, just because it's education doesn't mean it can't be cool. Like
I mean,
actually,
it should be even cooler, right? Because it's
and I think that some people, like a lot of companies, are scared to try and do something in education. It's why, it's almost why we deliberately. I mean, it is why we deliberately. If you look at the Pi Top 4 commercial, it, it you know I think in education, almost everybody does the same thing. It's like white background,
mm,
very bright, and you have the same type of approach to showing your product. And I think that what we wanted to do, and just our company is very different from most other education companies, is kind of show, well, there's this real world, and you can be like, you can learn computer science and be cool. Like you can hack stuff and be cool. It's not just like, there's this. I think you can change the perception of what people consider to be like cool and interesting to be involved in. And if you apply that towards computer science in schools, I think we're going to see something really really cool happen with students, and the fact that they will want to solve these massive life problems that we're going to be facing. Because everybody knows it. Like
yeah,
global warming, migration, like antibacterial resistance. There's like massive.
that's a big one that a lot of people don't talk about.
There's massive challenges that we're going to have to face, and I think the best chance we're going to have of helping to influence kids, students, learners, teachers everywhere to attempt to basically solve these problems is to genuinely be cool, be something that people want to be involved in.
I
And
think you're right. If you make it fun, like if it feels like people do their jobs and then they go and work some more, you
yeah,
can't. It's so hard to motivate people through like guilt or or like
but you
obligation.
gotta have a little bit of flair, otherwise you just get lost in the noise.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll expect to see a lot more flair in the future with Python.
Excellent.
We've only just begun on some of the stuff that we're going to be doing.
All right, metal. Okay, thanks for talking. This is awesome. I'm really excited to see this thing come out. And we'll put the links, everyone who's watching, thank you for watching. We'll put the links in the description to the video. Uh, Thank you so much. Have an
No, I
awesome day.
appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Ciao.
Bye.